Do you know how many B schools I turned down before deciding to go and do an MBA at IIM Ahmedabad? I basically had MBA offers from B schools like IIM Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Calcutta, Lucknow, Indore, Kozhikode, SP Jain, XLRI, all the CAP colleges, Shillong. There's a really long list. But you would have noticed that there's one glaring B school that I never got an admission offer from. I haven't spoken much about it here or on LinkedIn, but it is true that FMS did not extend to me an admission offer. And the reason for that is something that I'm very well aware of. It's because I made mistakes in that specific MBA interview, mistakes that I want to speak to you about today so that you don't end up making the same in your own B school interviews. Hi everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Priya Chatterjee and I graduated from the Indian Institute of Management Ahmedabad or IIM Ahmedabad in 2023 at the top of my class with a pre-placement offer from McKinsey & Company. Now, in this long journey of trying to get into IIM Ahmedabad and then once in IIM Ahmedabad trying to get into all the clubs that are there, I had to go through a lot of interviews. But to get my dream job, I only ever had to do one interview and I landed my dream job. Now you would wonder how that's possible, right? Considering how difficult placements are and all that they're made out to be. Simple. I, in this entire process of preparing and getting into B school, learned from the mistakes that I had made in my interviews, and that is exactly what I want to share with you in today's video. In this video, I'll talk to you about the 10 finer aspects of interviewing that people tend to miss out on when preparing for the big day. I want to make sure that you are aware of these body language symbols, of these preparation tricks, so that when it comes to your big day, you don't make the mistakes that I did and your chances of converting your dream B school are multiplied times infinity. We'll start with the first tip, which is about being respectful to everyone involved in the interviewing or the admissions process. I'll substantiate this with an example. Recently, a mentee of mine went for his IIM Ahmedabad interview, and in the AWT room, a very young man, very casually dressed, was distributing the sheets of paper on which the test had to be conducted. Now, the other interviewees probably thought, seeing how casually dressed he was, that he's just another staff member or someone from the admin team or the hospitality team or someone from the hotel who was helping out in the process. So they never really paid him much heed, they didn't greet him, none of that. This mentee of mine, of course, tells me that he was much nicer to him. He greeted him and treated him with kindness from the very onset, which is a great thing because it turned out that this guy was actually the interviewer on the panel that day. What this basically tells us, and our learning from this, is that we must always make a very good first impression. We have to realize that, the person even calling you into the interview room might not be just an usher or a casual worker in the hotel, right? They can be the interviewer no matter how they dress, no matter how old they look. So from the minute you step into the surroundings, that is when you get out of the car or whatever transport you've taken and you get into that hotel or the center in which your exam or your interview is being conducted, make sure you treat everyone with kindness, make sure you give them the respect that they deserve, and make sure that you make that good first impression, because first impressions are usually the last impressions that people take away from us. Extending this, I would like to speak about a question that I get very often about whether you should shake the interviewer's hand when you walk into the room, etc. And I personally am of the opinion that there's no need to do this. What I had done myself was very humbly bowed my head when I walked in the room. I had greeted the professors who were sitting there and I'd asked for permission to sit down. The reason I chose to do this was because I figured that my interviewers were going to end up being my professors at the B school once I joined there. So it would be better to treat them in a more respectful manner than in a professional manner, but that was my personal opinion. So if you ask me, the first tip that I would like to share is that you be kind and nice to everyone. You make a good first impression and you behave with kindness and humility when you walk in to the interview center. Okay, so the next point is about body language, and this deals with your overall demeanor in front of the interviewers. The first part under this is eye contact. I think that making eye contact with your interviewers signals that you are a confident and a self-assured person. So it's important that you make this eye contact. If while speaking to you in this video, I start looking away and, start fidgeting, it gives off the impression that I'm not probably confident in what I'm saying. So you should meet the interviewer's gaze head on when they're asking you a question. And when you're answering the question, if it's a panel of people, make sure that you speak to the person who's asked you the question about 90% of the time, but also look at the other interviewers or the other panelists 70 to 80% of the time, so that it appears that you are giving every person enough weightage or enough importance in the interview. This becomes even more important, making eye contact, when you're dropping hooks that you want them to pick up on so that they can ask you questions about it. So suppose your interviewer has asked you a question about your strengths or weaknesses, and you look at him and you answer the question. Suppose you're talking about a particular instance in which you displayed such a strength or weakness, and you want to talk a little bit more about it because you've come really well prepared. When you mention that instance, you can actually think about looking away from this panelist to another panelist and trying to speak to them about that instance. But make sure that whatever you do, you meet their gaze head on, and don't move your eyes away, or as in nazar mat jhuka lena, dar ke mare, or something along those lines. Always make sure that you come across with good confidence and self-assured nature. Now, the next point within body language is ensuring that you have the right posture. This means that you cannot sit ramrod straight as if someone has stuck a stick to your spine, but also that you cannot lie down as if it's your drawing room. You have to maintain a balance. An extension of this is to ensure that you sit properly with your feet and your ankles together, and you avoid crossing your legs because at times it might come across as vulgar. We also have to speak about your hands here, and I get a lot of questions about what to do with your hands. What not to do with your hands is that you don't keep them stiff, stuck to your body, or that you don't rest them on the table as if it's your dining table, or as if it's your area. You keep them nicely rested on your lap, or you use them to stress on your points. Additionally, make sure that you don't shake your legs under the table, which is a habit most of us have and tend to do under nervousness, but it gives off a very bad signal. If you want to know what signal it gives off, please Google it. This is a child-friendly channel. I will not talk about what signal it gives off, but make sure you don't do that. And an extension of that is that you don't fidget. So avoid touching your face, your hair, your clothes, and all of that, right? You use your hands to talk or to stress about issues. And if you don't want to use them at all, you just keep them resting on your lap. Point number 3 is about grooming, and I've already made a short about the clothes that you can and cannot wear, and what hair and makeup and shoes that you should have in an interview, and I'm going to link it in the description box and in the on top, so you can check that out for more details. Let's move on to the next point. The next point is actually a question I get asked a lot. It's about whether or not you can carry certain things into the interview hall. Basically documents and certificates, etc. Now, my simple answer to this is that you shouldn't be carrying too many things at all, because everything that you had to mention or that you could have carried has already been uploaded to the portal, and the interviewers already have a copy of it in front of them. That said, for the peace of your mind, you should carry things like a copy of your class 10, class 12 scores, your college scores, your any certificates that you would have uploaded onto the portal. That said, don't offer these to them in the interview unless they ask you for it, and don't get hassled if people ask you to leave your folder outside the room when you go out. Honestly, I don't know many people who've been asked to show anything to the interviewer during the interview process. So it's completely all right if you don't have these things as well. If there is some sort of verification that needs to be done, you've already been told what documents you need to carry. All of that verification happens outside the interview room and not inside the interview room. That said, you can avoid talking about your CAT percentile as well, because I've heard that a lot of B schools these days are hiding that aspect of your profile from the interviewers so that they don't have any bias when interviewing you. So if you are not particularly proud of your profile, or if you have some sort of insecurities about it, you can rest assured not mention it at all unless they specifically ask you. Now let's move on to the interview itself and talk about probably the first question that anyone is asked in an interview. Tell me about yourself and other such HR cues. I've already made a short about this, but I want to discuss this with you because even after explaining it again and again, this somehow doesn't seem to stick with aspirants. When someone asks you to tell them something about yourselves, the most generic answer that you can give is, "Hi, my name is Priya Chatterjee. I was born and brought up in Kolkata. I went to Loreto House and studied economics in St. Xavier's College." You see, everything that I've mentioned here is already on the form that you have filled and uploaded to the portal. So all this information is something that they already have. When you've been given the opportunity to introduce yourself, why would you waste your time telling them something that they already knew before you entered the room, or that they can read on the form that is in front of them while they're interviewing you? You get at max about 75 seconds to answer questions like this, and wasting it on things that are so immemorable basically means that you start your interview on a not so positive note. When you have the opportunity to introduce yourself, it becomes very important that you tell them something about yourself that is interesting, that makes you stick out. Now, they don't have to remember you for the rest of their lives. They don't have to remember you till the next day either. You just have to give them hooks. You have to give them interesting tidbits about yourself that they can ask you questions about. If you tell them that you went to this school and this college, they're going to ask you academic questions which maybe you don't want to answer in the actual interview. That is why it becomes very important that you frame your HR cues to bring out different aspects of your personality that go just beyond academics. Now, there are multiple ways in which you can prepare these answers. The first is that you can sign up for a one-on-one HRQ session with me where we can frame your answers, or you can take like a cheaper alternative, which is to sign up for a GDPI course online. Off the top of my head, I know that Cat King has a GDPI dashboard in which there are recorded lectures and ebooks as well by the founder and different alums from different institutes, where they've discussed what answers they gave themselves and sort of guided you on the sort of structure that you can use to frame your own answers as well. The way that you have to use these videos, ebooks, or even your personal one-on-one session with me, however, is to understand that whatever we tell you is basically just a structure of what we said. It doesn't have to dictate what you say in the interview. You can't just copy paste what I have said or what an alum from a different institute has said and use it in your own interview. You have to make your own. The next important part in your interview is GK and current affairs, and this is a mistake that so many aspirants end up making. They don't prepare for the GK aspect of their interviews. Here, it's not the static GK that I'm talking about. Of course, you need to know basic facts like what your name means, facts about your city, about your state, about the country. But no one's going to ask you static facts like, which article in the Constitution makes electoral bonds unconstitutional. That's not a question you're going to be asked unless you're a political scientist. But you need to be aware of the current and contemporary happenings in the society around you, and you need to have opinions on these because that's what you're going to be asked in the interview. You can't just make wishy-washy statements and get away with it. You have to prepare for this, and this requires you to go back at least 6 to 12 months in terms of current affairs to know all the happenings that have happened. When I think about it from the top of my head, you would have to know about things like the economic survey, the budget, and since this time we don't have an economic survey yet, last year's economic survey, the budget, the Maldives issue, the Ayodhya issue, the electoral bonds issue, farmer protests, all of that is important. Now, if I were to suggest something that you could use to build these opinions, I would suggest you follow the Byju's current affairs news analysis that comes out every day. But just doing that would probably only give you enough data going forward, because doing every day's compilation becomes very tough. So because I've mentioned Cat King already, I'm sure that their dashboard also has all these GK compilations. And like I said, you have to go 6 to 12 months back to sort of read up on all the issues that have been provided in a concise manner so that you know what has happened and so that you can build your own opinions about it. So going forward for the rest of the days, you can maybe skim the headlines that come in the newspaper every day, read the editorials, and for the months that have already happened, 6 to 12 months in the past, at least 6 months, 12 to be safe, go through the monthly compilations that you find on the dashboard that give you enough fodder and enough material for you to be able to form your own opinions. And once you make these opinions, you actually have to go out into the world and discuss them with people. And I think usually in my house, it's my father who is an avid news reader. He reads like 3-4 newspapers a day. So I used to have these discussions with my father, and you can similarly find someone in your close circle who does read the newspaper with whom you can discuss these opinions to make sure that you're not making blasphemous statements with whatever fodder has come to your mind. Okay, the next thing that we have to talk about is academics. And that includes revising your own old subjects, the subjects in which you have done your graduation in. You have to understand that B school and an MBA is also an academic pursuit. You are going to be a student in a B school. That means that when your interviewers are interviewing you, they are looking at their future students. And in that situation, a diligent student, a curious mind, a devoted student is very important. So, you need to know your academics well, and lagging in that aspect itself is a huge red flag, like a bigger red flag than Ranbir Kapoor was in the Animal movie. You can't not know your academics. So do this seriously. Look at the subjects that you had in your graduation, pick out your most favorite ones and revise them well. Take a look at the subjects that you weren't very fond of as well, and just glance through them, so that if you're asked a question about it, you're not completely unaware and you don't come across as a student who is uninterested. Because why would a teacher want to accept you as a student in their classroom if they know that you're not interested in the studies, right? It's not the future CEO of a company who's interviewing you for your B school role. It is a future professor, and for the professor, the most important aspect of your character is your academics and is the kind of student that you are. The next mistake that I see a lot of students make is believing that the Quora transcripts that exist about the perfect IIM interviews is the reality of what interviews actually is. A senior of mine also spoke about this, that Anant spoke about this, that there is usually this very well curated answer transcript that is uploaded on Quora about someone's interview. Usually it's 3, 4, 5 years old, and that's what everyone reads and thinks that, oh my god, the student is so brilliant, their interview went so well, I can never match up. And that sort of fear of perfectionism really messes with your head. Now, what you need to understand about these well curated answers is, first, if it's on Quora, it's probably several years old and it's been upvoted a lot, which is why you're reading it. What that means is that someone or many someones saw this perfect looking interview, thought that it was amazing, and therefore upvoted it, and that's why that is what's on top of the page, and that's why that's what you're reading. Second, if someone's interview is on Quora, it is probably a result of that interview going really, really well, because why else would you want to put a transcript out in the world and boast about it, right? Because it's not anonymous when it's on Quora. In most cases, it's not anonymous when it's on Quora. So it helps you build like a little bit of a following as well, because people are like, wow, this guy is so cool, this guy is so smart, that interview went so well. That's second. And third, when you read transcripts like this, the thing that you must remember is that it is not a complete word for word, minute to minute analysis of what happened in the actual interview. Because not many people in these interviews speak about the mistakes that they made, the questions that they couldn't answer, the awkward pauses that there were. Which is why it becomes very important for you to see anonymous retellings of interviews, or retellings of interviews on the day on which it happened, because that is when the maximum retention value of an actual interview exists. Of course, this is why I had started that original series of videos where I share transcripts live from the day on which the interviews happened. But if you don't want to spend the time watching the videos and the transcripts that are in there, you can also go to these MBA aggregator websites on which they've shared all of these transcripts in an anonymous manner. Because then in that case, there are so many of them, you can actually separate the perfect looking, perfect sounding interviews from the fake ones, or from the ones that have been trimmed to look better than they actually were. Examples of these would be Hit Bullseye, Cat King's Dashboard again, who have about 100 interview transcripts for just one college and one profile itself. It's important that you read through all of them so that you know the background, so that you know the kind of questions that are asked, and you know that there are people who make mistakes. And I was personally looking at one of these aggregator websites, I think it was Cat King, I'm not sure, where they'd mentioned everything, that there was this question that I was asked and I had no idea, and I said huh, as if I was talking to a friend of mine, which I found really interesting. And I thought that it was so honest of that person to share the actuality of their interview. And obviously I think that the reason they could share it is because it was anonymous. So the idea is that you don't fall into the trap of these Quora Pagal Guy answers where everyone is looking for validation and everyone is looking to get a little famous. But you look at these aggregator websites that actually share their interview experiences in an anonymous manner, which you can at least rely on to be more accurate. And also because there's so many in number, like Cat King and Hit Bullseye, because there are like 200, 300 of these interviews, you know that you can get a more realistic picture of what actually happens. Okay, The next topic that I want to talk to you about is lying and stress interviews. Now, some really, really bad advice I've been seeing on the internet is these coaching institutes and gurus and online channels saying that, it's very important that you make a mark in your interview, that you have to be, unforgettable, that they should remember you till the day you graduate from college. And if you don't go to their B school, they should miss you, etc., etc. None of that is important. Of course, you have to be interesting for the 2, 3, 5, 10 minutes in which you're being interviewed so that you can give them hooks to ask you questions about yourself. They don't need to remember you even till the next day after your interview is over, because you're marked on the very same day and that's it. They can forget all about you after that. So don't go ahead and make these grand sounding statements about yourself that you cannot back up, because usually when you make these overarching huge statements about yourself and you cannot follow it up with facts, or you cannot follow it up with experience, or your words come off wishy-washy, the interviewers who have been interviewing thousands of people, they can tell, and at the end of the day they can realize when you're not being realistic, or they can realize when you're not being your true self, right? So it's very important that you don't fake your personality as over chirpy or as very serious as well, because for a period of 20 to 25 minutes you cannot keep up such a good act. I think I saw a video somewhere where Vikrant Masse said that he had they did a lot of long shots for that movie, that 12th Fail movie that he just released, and those long shots were like 14-15 minutes long. Even Vikrant Masse, who's this year's Filmfare Critics Award winner, could do a long shot for 14 to 15 minutes, which means he could act for 14 to 15 minutes at a stretch. How will you, as a novice or a noob, be able to keep up this act of being chirpy or amazing or serious for 20 to 25 minutes? Your actual personality is going to peek out, and that is what PIs are all about. It's a personal interview. It is for you to show off your personality, and if you try to fake your personality in it, you are more or less going to be found out. So make sure that you don't go into this interview with made up statements, with things that are not true, with trying to portray yourself as someone you're not, with trying to make yourself memorable. At the end of the day, all they want is a good enough student, an average prospect, an average aspirant who is diligent, who is honest, who is well prepared. They're not looking for the next they're not looking for like an astronaut or a rocket scientist. They're not looking for someone who will go out of the B school and just change the world and just build Reliance Foundation from the ground up. They're looking for a diligent student. They're looking for someone who they would like in a classroom. So please don't lie about your personality. Don't fake it in the interview, because they're very easily going to catch you if you do that. Finally, we come to the most important mistake that people end up making in PIs. That is taking this stage too lightly. You see, whatever your percentile is, be it good or bad, at the end of the day, your personal interview is what makes or breaks your candidature. Most institutes don't even share your percentiles with the interviewers, so they completely make their decision basis what you say and what you do in the interview. And for that, you need to be well prepared. You need to write out your answers. You need to read them again and again, and you need to revise. You need to have answers written and prepared. You need to have speaking points about important questions like tell me about yourself, why MBA, strengths, weaknesses, and a whole lot of other questions that you'll find in my LinkedIn document, or you'll find on Cat King's dashboard, or you'll find in the majority of videos that exist about all of this. You need to have your talking points ready. You have to read them aloud to yourself so that you don't sound like a robo when you're sitting in front of them. You have to practice them in front of a mirror again and again. You have to say them to your family so that at the end of the day, it comes across as a conversation and not like something that you have ratta marod and gone for the interview. You have to revise. You have to prepare. You have to do everything in your power at this stage, because it is this stage that decides whether or not you're going to join a good B school or whether or not you're going to have to take a drop year. So that's all I had to share with you in terms of mistakes that people end up making in their B school interviews. I hope that after watching this video, you don't make those mistakes. I hope you liked this video. If you thought that it was helpful, make sure to like, share, comment. Tell me what mistakes you have made in your interviews, or if you think that I've made a mistake and I have left something out that I should have spoken about. Let me know what other videos you want from me, and they'll be going up very soon. I'm wishing you the very, very best for your interviews. I hope that you can crack it and get into the best B school that you possibly can, and that you build a great, great future for yourself. That's all from me for today. See you next time.